13 October 2020, and I'm joined by two guests from the Zimbabwe People's Party, Maslin Mpofu Jansen and Mr. Paul Soti. And today we're going to be talking about the very painful topic of the demolition of houses. Okay, so Mr. Soti, you're the one who is in Chitungwiza. What is happening there?
Thank you, Mr. Gambakwe. First of all, may I say our heartfelt sympathy to the residents whose houses were destroyed. I know at times it really takes an effort to build, and then this horrendous thing happens. What has been happening there? It's a shared history of corruption for a very long time. So it dates back to where corruption, it actually mushroomed everywhere, even in the housing, in the councils all over our country, if you may, Mr. Gambagwe. You see a lot of white collar crime. I think in Chitungwiza per se, there are two things that I must point out though. There are people who would have bought the stands or the properties to build, to construct their houses, very well knowing that it was an underhand dealing. That's another scenario. And on the other hand, there are people who would have approached the offices and paid money, but this money goes into a syndicate. So the syndicate, white collar crime, were very well arranged, from the office to the engineers to the people who come and connect the water for the services, rather to say, for the people, and then they begin to build, thinking that whatever they are doing is above board, since they've gone to the offices and paid the money there. So, and we see this now coming into play, where houses are being destroyed because some were built without any plan, and some of them were built on the wrong spots, wetlands, under the power lines, and at times on places reserved for town planning, or maybe developing to some extent the areas maybe where it would have been places earmarked for schools, or maybe for hospitals and so on. We have seen this happen for almost a period dating back to 20 years, when MDC also came in to actually begin to run most of our urban councils, if you may recall, Mr. Gambagwe. So it's a well-concerted effort of corruptedness from the officials, both from both camps, ZANU-PF in complicity, and MDC as well. In I think they've mastered the art of really corruption by the sporadic way we have seen houses mushrooming. At times you see there's a road, and the next morning you realize someone has just built a road and it's fenced. You can't understand. There are no playgrounds in Chitungwiza whatsoever, because all the playgrounds seemingly has been allocated for housing. So sadly, it has come to this, but it's in the backdrop of this unfailed governance from both ZANU-PF and MDC, particularly MDC, because they now run most of these urban councils. I saw the mayor, the honorable mayor of Chitungwiza, now saying, no, we had given instruction to destroy the houses that are being constructed, not the houses that are already been completed. But he said, surprisingly to him and the other officials, they realized the instruction they had given, it wasn't followed. They started destroying all the houses. So it's a very sad turn of events for our constituencies and our area in Chitungwiza as a whole.
Okay, so I want to go to you, Maslin. as ZPP, what is your position on what is happening in Chitungwiza? In Harare also, there were demolitions earlier this year. What is your position? What is ZPP planning to do to solve these issues?
Well, solving issues, it's a difficult matter on how we can do to solve the issues. We can try our best. The political ground seems like a playground for conmen and women right now who are in it for money. And so we have to shout out loud, but they have to be there for the people. They are there for the country. They're there to serve us, the people of Zimbabwe. What they're doing right now is like, if I could ask you, Gambakwe, a question. If somebody told you, I would give you $1 million if you go to prison and be beaten by lies for 3 days, what would you do? Knowing that the consequences are so small. Our councillors, MPs, they'll do whatever it takes. They get to keep all their properties. People have lost properties, they have lost their homes. So we really need to approach the government on that. They have to be held accountable. It's a crime as big as murder, actually, and people should be punished accordingly.
Mr. Soti, you are going to be contesting in the next elections. What position are you going to be contesting as?
Okay, obviously as a shadow MP for Chitungwiza South, I would be contesting as an MP in my constituents, but here's what ZPP really makes a difference in approach. We're not waiting for 2023. The solutions or the problems, they are so alarming that we cannot wait for 2023. We must begin to work now. The work that we have to do, if it culminates, that at the end of the day, people do vote for us, so be it. But I think the ethos of ZPP is wanting to bring a difference. Obviously, all these issues that we see, Mr. Gambakwe, I can assure you, under the ZPP government, it will never happen. I'll tell you why. Because these things, they don't just begin from the council chambers. They begin from the ideology. The ideology which motivates us as ZPP to do whatever we do or what we would want to do in future is because of an ideology that is work ethic based. Supervision, it's a daily thing. We cannot wait for, like we saw years ago when Mr. Tangirai recalled, fired all the councillors in Chitungwiza. I mean, which you'd look in the positive side, you think it's a good move, but it speaks a lot about accountability, because supervision and accountability, it's a day-to-day thing. And I think as ZPP, given an opportunity to showcase what we are made of and what we really want to do would make a huge difference. So we're not waiting for 2023, Mr. Gambakwe. We already working on the ground. What we would want to see is proper solutions. We begin to proffer solutions as the alternative. We cannot wait just to point fingers and we don't bring anything to the table. That's not what opposition politics is all about. I think MDC, if I may say, suffer from what I call non-patriotic approach when it comes to opposition politics. Because it's one thing to oppose, and it's another thing to oppose, and yet you are patriotic. We want to build our nation, national convergence. This is our country together, even though we might see things differently. So I'm hoping come 2023, we would have done a lot of work on the ground. We've got projects that are lined up. We've got papers, tried and tested projects that we would invite you when the time is right. Some of them low cost on non-capital intensive projects that we must run in constituencies and communities, proffering solutions to a myriad challenges or problems that we have in Zimbabwe. As ZPP, that's what we are looking at. So yes, would really love to contest as MP in Chitungwiza South, but my work will not start then. My work has already started with a lot of groundwork that we are doing, identifying possible councillors, a team that we'll run with, but not just running for elections. I think we have been sold a dummy by the powers or by the well-developed nations like America, who would sell us a dummy and say we need democracy. I know it's a subject for another day, Mr. Gambakwe, but I would put it on record that Africa doesn't need democracy. It needs meritocracy, work ethic. Everyone must work. If you don't perform, you go the next day. We don't wait for 5 years. So yeah, definitely we look forward to 2023. I'll contest as an MP for Chitungwiza South. And yeah, thank you, Mr. Gambakwe.
Right, so I think we've covered the topic. You've said both ZANU-PF and MDC are to blame for the current situation. Why should people believe that you won't do the same that MDC and ZANU-PF is doing?
As Mr. Soti said, we are not going to wait until 2023. Right now, what we encourage our shadow MPs to do is to work with their people, get to know their people, look for projects to do so that they can start helping their communities right now. People are sick and tired of promises. They're sick and tired of people preaching what they will do when they're elected into government. Our shadow MPs have to start showing now what they can do. That's why we have supervision. And with that supervision, if you've been with us for 6 months and we see no results at all, you're not helping your community with anything. And we do ask you to step down, be general member, or wait for another time and give someone else a chance, because we want people who start now teaching people, showing people that it's possible.
Councils are in shambles everywhere. Bulawayo, Harare, Chitungwiza, the big cities, they're in trouble. Bulawayo has got no water for days, something that is new, the city of Bulawayo.
Yeah, they've gone for 3 weeks at sometimes.
Right. So do you have councillors who are going to be contesting there also?
Yes, we do. Unfortunately, not so many in Bulawayo. People in Bulawayo are afraid. They are afraid. They actually feel that they are more targeted by the ruling government now than people who would come from Mashonaland. They really do still have the Gukurahundi in their minds. So in that way, they are afraid. At the same time, they really do not want people from Mashonaland to come and contest in Bulawayo. Like you see some villages, they employ policemen from Mashonaland to come and work in the rural Bulawayo, which is actually not fair, but people are just afraid in Bulawayo. So we really hope that those who are there right now will be an example for other people in Bulawayo, as to show them that it's possible with ZPP, it's possible, and they can join us, and they do not need to be afraid. We are not here to fight anyone. We're not here to fight any political party. We are here for the betterment of Zimbabwe.
Okay, that was a very interesting discussion. And I want to end with Mr. Paul Soti. Is there anything you want to say before we close?
Thank you, Mr. Gambakwe. What I would love to say is we need to find each other. The challenge that we have is we think there's help that is going to come from elsewhere. We've been looking to the West. There's a look East policy. And we must find each other as a nation so that we begin to provide solutions to so many problems that we have. Our beauty as ZPP is we have fused two different ideologies together, Pan-Africanism and meritocracy, which seems to suggest that every help must come from within. We are our own solution. I think the better and the sooner the better. At some point, we need to find each other. We need to sit down as Zimbabweans and say, what can we do? And if things are not working, I think, let us be honest enough, I think ZPP has been misconstrued to be an appendage of ZANU-PF because we speak. If the opposition fails, we speak. If ZANU-PF does well, we command because it's a shared patriotism that we have for our beloved country. Toxic politics must be thrown out of the window. We need to find each other. Let us build our country. We can find solutions. But what we see is two guys fighting each other at the BS and at the expense of the populace. That's why we see houses being destroyed in Chitungwiza and other places as well, because there are two people who are basically fighting and they want to fix each other to some extent. It's we need a national convergence. We need to find each other with patriotism. I thank you, Mr. Gambako.
I just ask our fellow politicians, let's not be enemies of progress. Let's show what we can do. Let's show what we Zimbabweans can do as politicians. Not be an example of how not to run a country, how not to run an education system, how not to run a health system. So please, fellow politicians, let's work together. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. And I think what we should do is everyone who wants to contact Mr. Soti, and I know that people from Chitungwiza, if you want to talk to you, there is your number on the screen, and you can then talk to them and get to hear what the problems are in Chitungwiza. Thank you very much, and we'll talk again very, very soon.